The Crusaders of the Diablo universe, a group of holy warriors with a mission to cleanse the lands of Sanctuary of evil. Now when you hear Crusaders, they do feel very similar to the idea of a Paladin. They're holy warriors, both of them. And in the world of Diablo, they are very similar, but there are some differences between the two. But that's not what we're going to go into today. Instead, we're just going to use one main idea, one concept from the Crusaders and their order in order to inspire a background, a backstory for a Paladin character in Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I am looking at this through the lens of Dungeons & Dragons, specifically 5th edition, because that's where I have the most experience, but this is kind of a loose concept, and frankly, you could just use for whatever tabletop system that you're doing, or whatever story you're trying to develop, because the concept we're taking is just a trope. It's a thing you see in movies and other stories. So what is that trope? It's the legacy character. Hey there, my name is Sudo and welcome to the channel. So, the legacy character, what is that? What does it mean? Well, let's talk a little bit about what the Crusaders do to create new Crusaders, because they are not like other institutes. They don't go out and recruit new members and have an institute where they train a bunch of people and then eventually, after they've proven themselves worthy and they've passed the tests, send them off into the world as new Crusaders. Instead, it's a one-on-one basis. Each Crusader is out on their own, typically traveling by themselves, and as they travel and over the course of their life, they're going to end up picking up an apprentice, a squire. And this apprentice is who they are going to teach everything they know. They're going to teach them about the order. They're going to teach them about their faith. They're going to teach them how to live and how to fight. And they do normally pick them based off of some aptitude. Right? They have to show some kind of natural skill at the holy arts and things like that. And they're typically very strong of will. They also typically come from the lower class or the working class. They don't normally pick people from the nobility or anything like that. But hey, this is your story, so you can choose whatever you want. So this new apprentice, if that's the person who's going to be a Crusader, you figure over the course of the life, a Crusader is going to be finding multiple apprentices and bringing in multiple Crusaders. But that's not how it works. You see, when they take their apprentice on, the apprenticeship will probably last for years. You know, who's to say exactly how long? The world of Diablo is very dangerous, though, and so the life expectancy for a Crusader is, I don't think, very long, necessarily. So, eventually, the master's going to die, and it's at that point that their apprentice becomes a Crusader, because they can't actually take on the role. They can't join the order and gain the title of Crusader until their master dies, because when that happens, they take on the mantle and name of their master. That is a legacy character, much like, spoilers for some things, I guess, from movies like Princess Bride or maybe The Mask of Zorro, but in Princess Bride, there's the Dread Pirate Robert. He's been multiple dudes over the course of years. It's just when one dude retires, he gives it on to another person and they become the Dread Pirate Robert. It's the same thing for, the Gray Fox, Mask of Zorro. I believe you could even consider like Batman or Robin really legacy characters, because you go from old Bruce Wayne, eventually passes it on to, oh my gosh, I forgot his name, and Batman Beyond. Same thing with Robin. Like there's been multiple Robins, but they're all Robin. So that's the idea of a legacy character, and that's what we're going to take and use for our Paladin character. And the other thing that you can kind of do when you're sort of comparing an apples-to-apples situation here between the Crusader and a Paladin, you can look at the Crusader's holy crusade, their holy mission to cleanse the lands of evil and save Sanctuary. You can take that and just convert it into whatever oath your Paladin is taking, like an oath of the ancients, where they're protecting the land and nature, or maybe it's an oath of glory, devotion, whatever it happens to be. So each paladin you encounter, they have their own personal crusade, but it's in the form of their oath. Now, outside of this concept just being really cool, something that I really like, it actually does a few things for our character, really explains several things and gives us some good opportunities. So first off, it explains, how do you know how to be a paladin? And obviously we had a master. They taught us how to do it. One of my favorite things, just have a master apprentice type of situation. Fantastic. Next, it's also going to give us a hook into the adventure. It's also going to give us good explanations and reasonable explanations for why we have specific gear, specific magic items, and items that fit exactly our playstyle. And then last but not least, it's going to give us some great opportunities for roleplay, character development, and just growth. It's really good. So how are we getting hooked into the adventure? Well, let's do a little scenario here, right? Let's pretend my buddy John, he hit me up and he says, hey man, I'm running the Tyranny of Dragons again. Do you want to get in on it? Of course we do. So he tells us a little bit about the setting, the enemies that we're going to encounter and everything, what the story is kind of loosely on, so that we can create a backstory. So we know that it's going to be involving dragons, and it's going to be involving the cult of the dragon. So we can incorporate that into our backstory to help us get hooked into the adventure. So for our character, we know he's going to be taken on as an apprentice for the Paladin. Not really Crusader anymore because the class is called a Paladin, but it doesn't matter. It depends on what your game is playing, right? So we are now an apprentice of the Paladin. So what's getting us hooked in there into the adventure, into the campaign, is the death of our master. So eventually, in order for our character to truly become one of the order, one of the Paladins, the master's going to have to die and we have to take on their mantle. So how do we lose them? What happens to them? So you can say that over time we've been just traveling along until eventually disaster struck. Maybe we bit off too much than we could chew, or just something crazy happened and then we lost them. But the key thing you could do is tie it in with the Cult of the Dragon, whatever the main antagonist of your campaign is going to be. So for us, Cult of the Dragon. Let's say that maybe a dragon actually showed up. We were doing a routine thing. We've just been fighting against them because our master's oath is an oath of devotion. So just by his very being and what he's sworn to do, it opposes the idea of the Cult of the Dragon. And so we've been going against him. So right there, it's kind of a hook just based on our oath, like just based on what our character is going to be. But then if we lose our master to the Cult of the Dragon, we now have a little bit more of a personal investment into it because that's who we lost him to. So not only are we tied in by our oath, we're now tied in because we've lost our teacher, our mentor. And so we probably naturally want to avenge them. And there's a few other ideas that you could roll with this thing too. You could have multiple hooks into different kind of storylines depending on how you want to do it. Because you can think about, how did your character join in with the master? Maybe something happened to your village beforehand. If the cult has been traveling along and raiding villages and towns, maybe your town got wiped out by them, and then you're one of the few survivors that are left, and that's when your master paladin found you and took you on as an apprentice. And so you're hooked in your own personal sort of past, nothing to do with learning to be a paladin. And then what you could do, you could double down on it by having your master dying to the crusade or to the Cult of the Dragon. Or maybe your master has died to something else, maybe something completely unrelated, like a vicious group of bandits and mercenaries. And so now you're tied in because you've lost your home and your oaths are both pushing you towards the Cult of the Dragon. But you also have another storyline where your master has been killed by some other group. And you could work with your dungeon master and be like, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? And then they could maybe tie in this group into the overall campaign. It could add an extra little side quest or something that weaves in with the overall storytelling. There's just a lot of potential that you could go with it. You could also go just less tragic. It doesn't have to be super tragic, right? Now, another thing we need to talk about is the gear. We brought it up earlier, right? So here's the thing. When you think about it and you think about what your master is, they're a master. They're teaching you how to be a paladin. They are not going to be level 1 because that does not make sense. In my mind, in my opinion, the master is going to at least be level 5 because why not? And if they're going to be level 5, that means they're going to have some pretty decent gear. They're going to have a few magic items. They're going to be set up fairly well because they've been doing adventures. They've been traveling on their own. And if you're really traveling on your own and doing things, you have to be pretty good at it, right? So now we have our new character, little Timmy, who's starting our campaign at level 1. He's lost his master and is now taking up the mantle of Paladin Bill. But Paladin Bill was wearing plate armor and had a +2 longsword. How does it make sense for our character, a level 1 character, to have a full set of plate armor, a +2 longsword, and whatever other magic items that are going on, right? It doesn't make sense. So how do we reconcile all that? How do we figure it out? Well, if our master was killed by a red dragon, how did we get the stuff from him? How did we recover his gear and items? If he was defeated by a vicious band of mercenaries, did they let us come back and collect his things? Were they being honorable? Probably not. So what has probably happened in the story is you've lost your master, died to a red dragon, maybe a champion of the cult, maybe, that band of mercenaries, something like that, right? And we weren't able to get that gear. Maybe like one piece or something like that. But the fact of the matter is we don't have it because we weren't able to get it. If we had tried, our character would have died and we would have to make a new character. So what happens from there? Well, now, over the course of the story, over the course of the campaign, maybe we encounter lieutenants and the champion that defeated our master, and they have the gear. And so as we progress through the story, as we defeat these leaders throughout the cult, we're actually getting pieces back. Maybe they're just locked in a storeroom, and as we make it to a certain milestone, we actually find those pieces. And so then it becomes an incremental reward. It becomes something that's organic and becomes a part of the actual storytelling for why we suddenly get a set of plate armor. It's not just a random set of armor that you find in a chest. It's our master's armor that this half-dragon champion took from him when he killed him. It's now the magical sword that this bandit mercenary leader has taken from his corpse and is using to, raid and burglar other people, right? And so it becomes an actual thing and not just finding something randomly in a chest. You know what I mean? And then last but not least is the potential, those opportunities for character development, growth, and role-playing. Because we have our character, they would have lost their master, and that would be when we join in with the party. There's some potential if you talk to your DM and stuff and how you want the timing to go. Maybe when you join the group, your master is still alive and then they die very quickly into the campaign, right? But you've recently lost your master and now you join in with the group. Well, you're going to be level 1 and you're not going to have their gear. So what's supposed to happen is your master dies, you take on their name, you take on their armor, and at that point you are now a part of the order, you are now a true paladin. But like I said, you don't have their armor or anything. You're also level 1, and technically, if you're going by the mechanics, the paladins don't take their final oath, like an oath of devotion, until level 3. So, could you rightfully and truthfully say that you are a paladin? Is your character actually worthy of it? That can be a question for you to ponder and think to yourself. How do you want to play it? Do you want to say, no, my character still hasn't actually earned it. I need to carry on my own for now and continue training by myself and with this new group before I can actually consider myself a paladin. Maybe you want to say that, hey, I have to get back his armor, get back his sword and that's like when I can take on their name. And that can become a big moment of growth and development for your character, where your team finally defeats his champion and you put on his armor, and then you are no longer Squire Timmy. You're now truly a paladin. You are now Paladin Bill. But you could also run it the complete opposite way, right? You could completely ignore that stuff, right? The mechanics of it, level 3 being where you get the oath. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The oath that's just a mechanic. Right? The true oath is what you take when you started training, when they started teaching you, and when they died, you still took the oath and you've continued to live it. So it's not about the mechanics, it's about the soul and the spirit of the thing. And so even though you're level 1, you're still a paladin. And even though you don't have your master's gear, it's not about the armor and the gear. They were more than just a bunch of things. They're an idea, an oath, and a mission. And as long as you carry on that oath and mission and you treat it with respect and honor it, then you are worthy of taking on their name. So there's different ways you can run it, right? You can see where I'm talking about there's just potential for, kicking my desk. There's a lot of potential for how you could run the roleplay and how you could carry the development for your character. And I really like that. There's some other things too that's like really fun that you could consider, because depending on what level you're starting at, that can also affect how long you were with your master. So with our campaign, we're saying, I'm starting at level 1, so that means I didn't have very long with him. I was only able to learn the basics before something happened and tragedy struck. Or maybe it was different. Maybe you spent a very long time with the master, but they weren't a very good teacher and they just weren't teaching you very much. And so even though, you've been spending the past year traveling together, you still only know the basics, so you're level 1. You could run the other way too. Like maybe you guys are starting at a higher level, starting at like level 3, so you've been traveling together for a bit. You've actually learned more than enough, and by the time they've passed on, Master Paladin Bill has actually said, hey, when the time comes, you are ready. You are ready to be a paladin. You could even go further if you're starting at level 5 or level 8 or something higher. You could say that you traveled together for a while and then eventually you lost your master. And then you've been traveling on your own. You've been continuing to hone your skills by yourself. And really, you could even make a case or a statement for having your own squire. Maybe you still have an apprentice, they're still learning when you join the party and you're doing the campaign, or maybe you've lost them. Maybe something else happened, and that can be its own tangent, its own story. There's just a lot you can do with it, and I really like this idea. It's one, the idea of legacy characters are just a lot of fun, and the Paladin Crusaders are basically just analogs for each other. I personally I like the idea a lot. And I think there's like another thing that I do just really like is the fact that you could apply this to any class. So say it's a wizard, right? You're going to make a wizard. You could say you were the apprentice of a wizard, right? It's a whole master apprentice thing. But this wizard that you have been apprenticed under has been the wizard presiding over this town region for like the past 500 years. It's just been a sight the villagers have seen up on the hill, the wizard's tower, right? And so you're like, oh wow, this wizard has been here for 500 years. Only it turns out it's not the same dude. It's been like 20 guys over the past however long, and they've just been trading names and hats. And so you're just the next in the line. He's going to train and teach you, and then you become the next wizard. You could do the same thing with like a bard, right? You're under some master mysterious performer who always wears a mask, so nobody really sees what they're like. And that's because it's not the same person. It's been 20 different people over the past 100 years. So there's a lot of fun potential that you could do with it, and I really like it. But with that, that's going to be the end of the video. I appreciate it if you stayed this long and you listened to the whole rant and idea. This is just me getting ideas out there, and I'm planning on doing some other videos because over the course of my life, I've played a lot of games. I've read a lot of books. I've watched a lot of movies and shows, right? And there have been a lot of different ideas that are really cool, like this one, legacy characters, very awesome. And then there are some that are way more specific to certain games, movies, and whatnot. And because I play D&D, and I've been the dungeon master at various points, a lot of what I do is influenced by the media that I'm consuming at the time. And every now and then I get these ideas, and I really want to use them in a tabletop setting, and I think about how could I use it? How would I turn this into the world building? How would I turn this into a mechanic? And then a lot of them I just never get to use. And like this one, I've never used this idea for a character ever. Maybe I will eventually, but I haven't, and I don't know when I'll use it. So these ideas, I want to share them out there for other people to hear and get your own brains thinking, and then maybe use them for yourself or convert it and turn it into something that you can use. You know what I mean? And some of it I'm going to feel a little bad about because it's kind of like you're just stealing ideas, and I don't really like that. But at the same time, a lot of them are like this. If I hadn't explained that this is a common trope, that it's a legacy character, you might have just been like, oh, you're just stealing the Crusader idea. Kinda, but also no, because like I said, this is done across all kinds of different forms of media. It's all over the place. And that's a lot of the ideas that I look at. They're actually not unique to whatever place I take them from. It's just, that's where I encountered it. And so that's where what happens with a lot of the ideas is you think like, oh, this is so unique, but it just turns out this is the only place you've seen it when it's actually been done in a bunch of other places as well. But anyways, no more rambling. Thank you again for watching. If you've made it this far, I do really appreciate it. This is technically my second channel. I have another one that I do other stuff with. And the point of me bringing that up, and while I hate saying it, if you did really like this, I would really appreciate it if you go ahead and subscribe. If you leave a like, because I am planning on doing some more videos kind of in the same vein and maybe some other things. Who knows? I just kind of do this as I decide I want to do this stuff, right? And as a little sneak peek for what I think the next video is going to be, I think I'm going to be using Cyberpunk as an inspiration for some world building, specifically the Black Wall. But until then, like always, take care.